Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Amanda and CGD, for inviting us here. You guys are great friends of GAVI, and it's always very rewarding to work with you in more ways than one. So thanks very much. And Alison, Michael, and Amy, great to be on a panel with you. So I'm going to speak about the GAVI Innovative Finance agenda going forward. Helen mentioned the three-legged stool a couple of times, and certainly when it comes to country co-financing and sustainability, and when it comes to vaccine prices and market shaping, that's part of the GAVI Innovative Finance landscape. But Helen also said we have a pledging meeting coming up in June, and so it's really all hands on deck, including all innovative finance hands on deck, to look at the third leg for the moment, which is around resource mobilization and donor funding. And also Amanda's only given me a few minutes, so that's what I'll focus on. So just to say, the headline is that our aim is to expand the portfolio and to continually develop a portfolio of funding sources that is, first of all, diversified in terms of the source that the funding comes from, public, private, etc., in terms of the duration, long-term, short-term, and in terms of the volatility. So some more predictable, some more volatile, but both upwards and downwards. And then secondly, a portfolio that enables us, by design, to meet donors' needs, whether they be public or private. They have different needs financially, fiscally, and politically, and so forth. And so to engineer around those and to be able to offer a suite of product that meets them. Next slide, please. So to give you a sense, these are therefore, from an innovative finance perspective, the 5 principal work streams that we're engaged in right at the moment. And you can go straight on to the next slide, please. So Alice spoke about IFM, and I think made a lot of pertinent observations. And Amanda, if we have a few minutes at the end, I can perhaps reflect back on some of those. I think it's a good discussion to have. But in a nutshell, I mean, IFM has worked. And so it's a vehicle that, as Alice previews, we want to maintain as a permanent plank as part of the GAVI funding portfolio going forward. And there are many reasons for that, some of which we've flashed up here on the board. But the principal one is probably the sheer visibility of funding and the flexibility of that funding, both of which are very important in our business for some of the reasons that Michael touched on during his talk. There has been a very recent independent evaluation of IFM, and the results are in the process of coming in. But I can tell you, sort of in the second line of the executive summary, this little quotation appears, which is, IFM has worked, it's been cost effective to deliver what it promised, and the case for donors to put further money into it, this is an evaluation that was commissioned by donors, is strong. Next slide, please. The next work stream that I wanted to talk about is our approach to the private sector. So we believe that the private sector has got the potential to be a significant contributor to GAVI's finances. Will never dominate GAVI's finances, but certainly can contribute significantly more than the 0.something% that it currently does. This does require us to allocate time and resources to that funding stream. So we need to make resource allocation decisions, but we believe that it is worth it, not only because it reduces dependency on government donors and spreads the portfolio from that perspective, but also because it enables us to spread the word. It's a virtuous cycle by which we obtain more and more investors in, as it were, people who literally buy into the GAVI mission and understand the power of immunization. And so I think, consumer citizens, the more that they're engaged in what we do and support what we do, the easier they make that for politicians to vote money to us and so forth. Certainly, historically, as you alluded to, Amanda, we have developed a private philanthropy approach. I think going forward, what we're now looking to layer onto that is an approach which uses one of the principal assets that we have, which is very high-level political commitment and the sovereign money that comes along with that to leverage in private capital. And I think that's a new direction in our thinking, and there's some exciting developments on that front. So next slide. This is a project that we have recently announced with the UK government and which we're about to launch into the market. It's a very simple product which we call 1 + 1 + 1 because there are 3 actors involved. It's the government, it's a company, and it is a consumer citizen. And if you go straight on to the next slide, The mechanics are very straightforward. If I'm the UK government and you are, Vodafone, I will say to you, look, if you undertake to contribute £5 million to GAVI over the next 5 years, the UK government will match that pound for pound. But by the way, part of the deal I'd like to do with you is that you also go out with a marketing campaign to your consumers and to your employees, for that matter, and tell them about immunization, tell them about GAVI, and look to garner money from them. And every pound that you take from them, the government will also match up to some sort of cap. The UK government has endorsed this and allocated £50 million to the project for us to get it off the ground, and we are now in the process of going out to the market with the product in collaboration with the UK government. Our ambassador in the UK for these discussions with corporates is the current chair of the board of IFM, Alan Gillespie. Next slide, please. This is just to give you a sense of a work stream that is deliberately on the back burner until post-June the 13th, but one that we'd be delighted to engage you folks in. I won't say much about it except that it's conceptually very similar actually to what the Global Fund has recently been doing with Dow Jones, with Deutsche Bank, which is looking at the impact investing, or more accurately, socially responsible investing market, and seeing whether there is a way to effectively bootstrap endowment-type revenue as part of the funding stream. And so this is we're looking at a similar market with a slightly different approach. And as I say, delighted to work with you on that starting on June the 14th. Next slide, please. The next theme I wanted to talk about, this is the next work stream, is leveraging donor balance sheets. Helen and I were talking about this in the cab coming over. In our world, there is as in everybody's world, I suppose, you always want to look to make cash that is not working hard enough work harder. And so we are working currently with one of our donors in a project that was approved by our Audit and Finance Committee recently. And it's conceptually very simple, again, which is, we sit on very large cash reserves. This is not an actual number, but it's not far from the truth. Let's say $1 billion. And the idea is very, very simple. Certainly in the corporate world it would be simple, which is take that cash reserve down by, in this example, $300 million, use the cash to buy vaccines, but still have the security that the cash buffer is supposed to give you against future operating expenses, because you replace the cash with a line of credit, with a credit facility, which in this case would be supplied by a commercial bank, but it would be guaranteed by one of our donors. So it's leveraging the donor balance sheet and using, and freeing up cash that we can use now for vaccination. And this is a theme that we're looking at in various parts of our business. Then finally, to round out the suite, we just did want to say that when it comes to, if you go back to my diversification point at the beginning, diversification of the portfolio, part of that diversification is designing to donors' needs, and our donors are principally sovereign. And so we need to look, other than the kind of vanilla multilateral contributions that donors have historically made to us, we have to look at all kinds of creative ways of accessing other pots of monies that sovereign donors have available. And so our executive committee has authorized a pilot on accepting a certain limited amount of bilateral aid from donors, on the condition that it doesn't conflict with our essential multilateral business model, and that we don't end up with neglecting beneficiaries and recipients just because, as it were, they don't have a bilateral godmother or godfather. So that's a pilot that we are now in the process of rolling out, and we'll monitor that over the next year or so. And then I did want to flash up here that when it comes to money that is areas like IDA, International Development Association, the concessional finance arm of the World Bank, which has announced in its last replenishment a very big commitment to immunization. The question is, can we help them to find ways to access those funds? And I think we'll have a productive relationship with the World Bank and others around that. The World Bank also, administers a specific trust fund that many of you are aware of, which is around results-based financing, and which is, several hundreds of millions of dollars, which largely come from the UK and Norway. And, can we offer a product that will appeal to that trust fund, etc. So I think again, this is an idea that we have on a slow boil at the moment. We'd love to see, as you know, Amanda, whether it's the type of thing we can work with you folks on. And then finally, to round out the work streams, just to let you know that when it comes to things like the leading group on innovative financing for development, the stuff that happens in the UN, the G20 and so forth, when those folks talk about innovative finance, sometimes it is the kind of stuff we've been talking about here, but very often it's actually about raising incremental fiscal revenues. It's about raising, in effect, new taxes or levies to fund development from outside the official development assistance or ODA budget. Now, that's not much that as an institution or an organization, GAVI can do that much about. But we do want to make sure that we encourage those initiatives and that we remain on the radar screen and that global health remains on the radar screen. So we try to allocate the appropriate amount of resource to this. Alice will be familiar with the challenge of doing that. And we try and do it in a way, hopefully, that is sensible and strategic. But I think very significantly, we try to do that with partners in the global health space. And in November in Tokyo, I agreed with a number of colleagues in agencies such as the WHO, UNITAID, the World Bank, the Gates Foundation, the Global Fund, that we would form under the Secretariat auspices of the French government a health sector task force within the leading group on innovative finance for development. And the objective there is, make sure that when it comes to the G20 and other fora, that global health has its place in the sun in relation to all the currency transaction levies, the tobacco transaction tax proposal, and so on. And that clearly, from our perspective, within that, GAVI is recognized as one of the players there. So that's really it from my side, Amanda. I wondered if you want me to sit down now, or it would be quite useful at some point to reflect on Alice's comments, but should I do that later? You guide me. Thank you very much.
Sorry.